Welcome back. It's time once again for Tip of the Day, Tip of the Day, Tip of the Day. Dr. Z, what's our tip for today?
Today's tip is ask because you just might receive.
Nice. Aside from the usual suspects of, oh my God, I'm afraid I might get rejected, what are some of the other popular reasons why people are afraid to ask for stuff?
Yeah, especially as I was thinking about this idea of abundance, right? We talk so much about abundance, how everything that we need, all the resources are available to us.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we still continue to have this scarcity mindset. So, one of the main things that I find, which I struggled with, is just the idea of perfectionism.
Sure.
That I'm supposed to have it all, I'm supposed to know it all. And so to ask is kind of seen as a negative, like you're ignorant or you're just inadequate.
Typical trait for doctors, right? Doctors, we think of doctors, right, to be that perfect person. They got to have all the answers, but they don't always have all the answers.
Or physician heal thyself,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And also this concept of like superwoman. I
Mm-hmm.
see that in a lot of the women I coach too are business owners. They're used to being in control. They're the caretakers.
Mm-hmm.
So to actually be seen as needing care or needing support, it's like don't think that don't take my kindness for weakness. This idea of like just because I'm asking you, don't think that I'm weak. So I think there's a lot of that misconception and still this idea of scarcity that
Or that shock that this person who has it all together, oh
yeah,
my God, they're asking me for something?
yeah. And so I think it
Mm.
really holds a lot of people back
Yeah.
because if you do think about the resources that are available to you, having that mindset of scarcity actually blinds you to what is available to
Mm.
you because you don't ask. I think about, I read a story about Richard Branson. That I think you said that he has dyslexia. And
Mm.
so he learned at a very early age to ask people to help him for the things that he needed. But yet, as he grew older, that trait of learning how to ask for what he needed
Mm-hmm.
serves him well
Yeah.
in his business. Also, Henry Ford. Henry Ford wasn't the smartest man, but he surrounded himself with very smart and intelligent engineers. And so he knew exactly how to ask them for what he needed for
Yeah.
his business. And they many times he got that from
Yeah,
them.
so then what they did was they took this adversity that they were confronted with, and
Yeah.
because, well, it was probably just they did it at, like, the first example probably did it out of
Necessity.
necessity is
Yeah.
the word. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
out of necessity. Yeah, but then they found that it actually served them.
Right.
And many times that's how adversity is. Like we can see it as a negative, but then sometimes that's our greatest strength.
Right.
I remember one of the doctors I knew, she was diagnosed with ADHD as a young child.
Hmm.
And that was always such a stigma to her, but yet she was able to overcome it or manage it, go to medical school, become a psychiatrist, and she helps children with ADHD.
Wow. Yeah.
So that adversity turned into a superpower for her.
You see that all the time with people.
Yeah.
I'm doing the Gupta program right now. It's for people that have all these maladies that they range from chronic fatigue syndrome,
Yeah.
anxiety,
Yeah.
burnout, all these things. There's a whole bunch of them, too many to rattle off here. But yeah, that guy had chronic fatigue syndrome, and he ended up becoming the healer and developing the program that is now
Mhm.
helping thousands of people.
Yeah,
Right?
I like this idea of suffering symbol. And there's a story in the Bible where there were these snakes that were biting people. And then God told Moses to actually create a symbol of a snake and lift it high. And when the people would look at that symbol, they would be healed.
Mm.
And it was the idea of this suffering symbol that our suffering symbol has actually become our greatest beacon of hope, becoming a beacon for others. And so really transforming that adversity into something positive and beautiful. Yeah.
So let's dig into some asking things that maybe we can give the listeners and viewers a few tips and ideas on. If you're struggling with asking, well, I started doing some things. You want me to expand?
Sure.
A while ago, we were in a mastermind group, and one of our people in there, Jeffrey Gitomer, who wrote the Little Red Book of Selling, is a master question asker, right? And we found out about that in one of our groups. We were in Florida. Another person in our group, Justin Benton, went to a ball game with him, and he says, yeah, Jeffrey, man, he talks to everybody. He's asking people all the time. So I picked up on that, and I started doing that. And by doing that, you build that reflexive muscle of learning how to ask for stuff. You just start asking questions. And a good thing that you can do is you can get out there and just, you don't know what to say. They got a funny hat on. Hey, where'd you get that hat? Or they're wearing a colorful shirt. Or it doesn't take much to lead in. And when you build a strategy around that, and then you just embed your ask, your big ask in there at some point in time, it just flows into the conversation. Before you know it, you get it out there.
It's a practice. It feels uncomfortable in the beginning, but like with everything, the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. Right. And I remember you were talking about clothing, because sometimes if I see a woman and I like her hair, I'm like, oh, your hair is really nice. There was a guy that had these bright red shoes. And I mean, I'm normally not someone that approaches people, but I had to say something about those shoes. I was like, dude, where'd you get those shoes? So sometimes it just comes out of you. Yeah. The other thing which I like is actually visualization. So I start to imagine myself in the scenario, doing the thing. Sometimes even when I am in the moment, like I remember as a networking event, I was sitting at a table and I was starting to feel uncomfortable. Like they were going around, everybody talking. And I started to visualize myself, like, how do I want to present myself? And sometimes I start to laugh because I'm like, that's what I want to do. And people are probably like, what is she smiling about? But I'm entertaining myself.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So visualization is really helpful. And just even trusting that what you visualize, more often than not, it actually is what happens. It comes about.
Yeah. Another quick story for you gals and guys. We were getting ready to launch our podcast. This podcast you're listening to right now. And we've got all these segments. We had ideas we wanted to do a book thing, and we got out wind of an author, the billionaire, Rami El-Batrawi. Yeah. We got some of his books, and I said to Zelda, I said, hey, should I ask him to be on our show? She's like, why not?
Why not?
And here's the thing, everybody. We build all this fear up in our mind. The worst thing they're going to say is no. And most people are pretty gracious, and they'll be, if they do say no, they'll be fairly kind around it. You may not want to hear that no, but if you do hear it, it's going to be pretty gracious. So, and it was simple. This ask was over LinkedIn. I just sent him a message, and he responded back to our amazement. And sure enough, he said, yes. I'll be on. And next thing you know, a couple months later, he's episode 3, by the way. Check it out.
Episode 3, yeah. Because we asked,
right.
Because the fear of asking and that fear of no, you have 100% of no if you don't ask. And one thing I want to say too is that it's about trust too. It's like trusting yourself that even if whatever the response is, you're going to have your own back. Because it's really not about you at the end of the day. It's usually about them, whether they feel like they need whatever it is that you're offering. But it's trusting yourself and then trusting the outcome that it's all going to be okay. And sometimes I think the reason why we don't ask is because it's a lack of control.
Yeah.
And so it's stepping out into the unknown. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Another story for you guys. Just yesterday, we were out, beautiful day,
Yeah.
playing pickleball. There was a couple next to us, and I went over and I was excited because when you're playing doubles, it's way less strenuous. And when you're playing singles and we're older, you get tuckered out kind of fast. And so I went over to the couple, and it was a guy and a gal, and I said, "Hey, you guys want to, partner up and play doubles?"
Doubles,
And they didn't want to, and I was really kind of bummed about the whole thing because I was getting tired too, along with I wanted to interact and play. It makes it more fun when you're playing doubles, right? And they both had said, we haven't played in like a year, and this is our first time playing back, and even then we only played a few times. They weren't comfortable. And once I started to, it was a rejection, right? But once I started to ponder it and think about it, and got, in the beginning, I was like, being the spoiled little kid about it in my mind and thinking, when did they want to play? Blah, 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 but then after a while, I'm like, see it from their side. They didn't want to play, and just accept that. So I focused on acceptance, and I handled it a lot better. So the lesson right there is just accept whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent. Just accept it. And if you can, just try to see things from the other person's point of view. Maybe they were both kind of introverts and shy, and they didn't really want to do it. You don't want to force somebody into doing something they don't want to do. Yeah. So in the end, I was like, yeah, that's just fine. They just weren't ready. So
and it's more so about them than about you and what you're offering, which makes me think about self-care. We're currently have a self-care 101 masterclass. And one of the things that we're really developing is just the attributes of self-care. A couple of them, assertiveness. Mm-hmm. I mean, the more that you ask, the more comfortable you get with being somewhat assertive.
Yeah.
Self-acceptance, like you talked about acceptance.
Right.
So asking actually benefits your self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And another benefit is just happiness. Mm-hmm. If you can just allow things to occur the way that they're supposed to, you don't have to control everything.
Right.
Then there's a peace and a comfort and a calm almost. Like it's going to work out the way that it's supposed to, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
Right. And then also building better relationships. I mean, we can look at it with that couple. They really didn't give themselves the opportunity to get to know us. They might have really liked us. We may have had a great time. So sometimes being open and being willing to opportunities and possibilities, it just opens up a new world for you. I'm thinking about when we met,
Right.
How long did it take us before we finally spoke to each other?
Well, over a year.
Yeah. But then we started to talk to each other very slowly at first. Sometimes you got to take those small steps, those baby steps. He'd say, "Hey, Lucky," and keep on walking.
Too much fear to continue on, you guys.
Yeah.
I was the introvert. We're both introverts.
Both of us.
Back then, we were doing stuff that I knew that I had to learn how to network and get out there and start talking to people. And you'd be amazed at how your confidence grows, your self-esteem rises, all these factors. Once again, back to self-care, there's these things that start to happen, and you start to live that more
abundant,
joyful, and fulfilling life. It all really ties together.
It all ties together, and you just you allow yourself to experience more of life. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to continue to get what you've always got.
Madness. Insanity.
So start taking those risks. And again, start with baby steps. If it just seems too daunting, too overwhelming, start with those little baby steps. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that's about it. Just wrap it up. Abundance really allows you to experience more joy and happiness, and it builds better relationships with others as well as with yourself. And that's really where it all starts.
Yeah, so I would say the takeaway for this tip of the day is practice, practice, practice. The more you practice
Yeah.
asking,
Ask.
flexing your asking muscles.
Yeah. You just might.
You're going to build your courage, your confidence, your self-esteem. All that stuff goes
all
up
that stuff
everybody.
rises up. Yeah. And then a rising ship raises all tides. So it doesn't only help you, but it even helps the people that you ask, because
Right.
they might discover new resources and strengths that they didn't even know they had.
Yes.
Which could actually allow them to even support you more. But you don't know if you don't ask.
Nothing happens if you don't ask.
Absolutely.
You stay stuck right where you are.
Yeah.
All right. There you have it, everybody. The tip for today. All right. And as always, thank you in advance.
Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. Yeah, we're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing